military historian for Carleton County, also owner-operator of the Carleton County Military Museum, Balma Woodworks, and Military Matters, the Balma Report, space on Twitter, the longest-running pro-Ukraine space and one of the longest-running pro-free Iran spaces. What I'm about to give you tonight is the synopsis of what my friend is going through directly right now in the streets of Iran, and it is all over the country. This is a detailed ground report from Tehran and Karaj. I'm inside Iran. I write this from a connection so weak it feels like breathing through a cracked wall. I'm an IT expert, and it still took me 3 days to build a slow, unstable link. Most of my friends have nothing. No messages, not even calls during the night. Absolutely no internet connection at all. And that's because the Chinese systems that were given to the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, are blocking Skylink internet to try to block out the world from what is really happening inside of Iran. This is only a fraction of what happened across these nights. Even if an all-seeing AI tried to translate every second into words, the result would be hundreds of pages, at least 300, because the whole country was fighting in the dark at the same time. This is my diary of January 8th through January 10th. It is built from what I witnessed and what trusted friends and family relayed to me through offline means and brief signal windows during the blackout. I am not guessing. I am recording. Thursday, January 8th, 2026. The call was from 8 p.m. People started chanting before 4 p.m. By 6 p.m., the digital blackout began to clamp down. Connections dropped, returned, dropped again. I kept mine alive by switching through layered VPN methods. Most people could not. One by one, the city went silent online while getting louder in the streets. By 8 p.m., Tehran and Karaj were packed wall to wall. Protests do not look like that. Not like this. This was the streets being taken back. We have not seen numbers or nerve like this in 2009, 2022, or November 2019. From 8 p.m. to 11 p.m., the streets were fire, clashes with regime forces, people defending each other. Around 9 p.m. in some areas, they moved to live rounds. People were shot. Okay, so that's a couple days ago. That's Thursday. That is January 9th. January 9th. Tehran, Hafez, Narmak, Tehran Piers, these are our town cities. A friend in Narmak described a crowd that still sounds unreal. Elderly women and men, youth, children, every kind of Iranian. It was not one group. It was the country in one place. At about 7:10 p.m., they saw roughly 10 to 20 uniformed forces near the metro. Later, the uniforms faded. The plainclothes multiplied inside the crowd. Before the main gathering fully peaked, my friends tried to use the restroom. They entered through the parked entrance of a commercial complex. The moment they stepped inside, the chant hit the building. Long live the Shah. Immediate. Then tear gas was released inside the mall. Panic. People rushed for the exits. They took an elevator down to reach the restrooms. Suddenly people ran in, telling them to get out now because the doors were going to be shut and they would be trapped and jailed inside. They ran out and hit a flood of people in the streets, then stayed with the chant and moved toward the larger crowd. Tear gas kept landing in the middle of people over and over. In 1 hour alone, more than 20 to 30 canisters were fired. One detail matters. The friend reporting this was near the back end of the crowd, and the crowd stretched for about a kilometer. From where they stood, it did not make sense for the gas to be coming from the direction of the Haftaz police station. Some canisters seemed to come from within the crowd or from above, from rooftops or higher points. That kind of attack makes you doubt everyone around you. Over roughly 4 hours, that friend says they stopped seeing uniformed forces entirely. What they saw instead was plainclothes agents everywhere, breaking groups apart with speed and ease. People fought back the way unarmed crowds can. They pulled down signs, they smashed surveillance cameras, they kept moving. The crowd did not shrink, it grew. By around 10:30 to 11 p.m., regime forces started dispersing the crowd again and again at intersections. The mass broke into smaller clusters. People got scared. Many started to leave. But from the front came a different report. People were saying groups were moving toward the Haftaz police station to storm it. Then came shootings. My friend reported people were hit, including someone shot right next to their friend. Part 2 of 3. Near the metro, they reported people seeing a police car on fire. At an intersection, they reported people burning street fixtures, including bus stop infrastructure. Another detail matters because it shows how the regime uses rumors as a weapon. People kept warning that Basiji and plainclothes were waiting at squares and corners. So the besieged forces. My friend could not move toward their car because they feared they would be grabbed. Later, they realized many warnings were part of the fog itself. In some places, there was nobody there. Tehran, other districts reported to me that night as well. Yusuf Abad had a major regime base in the neighborhood. People still held position all night under fire. At least 3 deaths were reported to me from that area. Sadogayah was worse. A friend reported at least 8 shot dead. More than 200 people went home with severe injuries. At least half were described as serious enough to need hospital care. Even with that, the crowd held until regime forces backed down. Then people held the area through the night. Ekbatan took repeated waves and shootings. Regime forces still failed to disperse the crowd. They withdrew. Karaj, where the night turned sharper. Minshar, which is another city, sorry, I'm trying to pronounce it right, saw direct fire into the front rows once forces realized they could not break the crowd. The intent was to kill and injure the first line so the rest would scatter. Deaths and injuries reported. Gushar escalated step by step. First warning shots, then grenades and heavy tear gas. When that failed, live fire. People still held the streets and did not go home until 2 a.m. Gushad had one detail that says everything about how they treat civilians. A car that was only honking was hit by direct rifle fire. Described AK-47. So they're firing AK-47s regularly on civilians. That was Thursday. Through it all, the blackout kept thickening. I stayed connected through layered workarounds. Most of my contacts went dark. The rest reached me through offline relays and tiny signal windows. Every update felt like a note passed through a prison wall. Friday, January 9th, 2026. Tehran pars again. The second night was not smaller. It was more violent and more tactical. My friends reported around 20 to 30 motorbike units arriving. They hit crowds with gunfire and grenades like it was routine. The pattern repeated. People scattered, people regrouped, people returned. One moment sticks out. During a hard charge, a friend looked right and saw guns aimed directly at them. The shooters fired above heads into doors, walls, and buildings. It was not harmless. Debris and fragments hit people in the head and body. They took refuge inside a home because continuing to run meant being caught. In their words, it felt like a shoot to kill posture, not crowd control. When the engine noise finally faded, they went back out toward Sayedal Shahada Square. They saw a large crowd still moving, still present, still flowing toward Felka Aval. The regime did not get to decide when the night ended. Taraj, Golshar, Friday night. Golshar became sustained street control. People effectively closed streets and pushed regime forces back for 5 straight hours. Around 11:30 p.m., my network reported a huge explosion sound described as coming from above. Minutes later, the sky turned orange. They reported the Shathdari building on Haddadi Street burning, flames shifting colors, red, orange, blue, even green at one point. The building was described as destroyed. At least 2 people were reportedly shot, based on eyewitness accounts from my friends. Saturday, January 10th, 2026, and this was 2 days ago. Tehran, Sadat Abad, and Sadar Khan. The surge was bigger than expected, and these are friends of his. And of course, these are in several different areas, right? Several different areas. The crackdown was harsher than expected. The crowd still did not fold. At least 11 deaths were reported in my network across those areas that night. There were also reports of casualties on the regime side, but we do not have a reliable count on casualties. 3 of 3. What stayed consistent all 3 nights, across all 3 nights, the regime climbed the same ladder everywhere. Warning shots, tear gas, grenades, and live fire. Motorbike strike units were used for fast intimidation and dispersal. Plainclothes agents operated inside crowds, creating fear, confusion, and sudden fragmentation. At least one place, the front rows were targeted directly to force retreat. Yet still, people held ground. They regrouped. They came back again and again. Line and sun flags were visible in the open. The fresh Kavani flags were visible too. The street was not only angry, it was declaring identity. The chants were not random, they were directional. They said what we reject and what we are moving toward. Iran, Shonamud, Framan Bid Shazala, Iran is ready, give the order, Prince. They're waiting for Pahlavi to come back in. I got a Nodbad, Pahlavi, Brahmagord. This is the final battle. Pahlavi returns. Long live the Shah. Javed Shah. We do not want the Islamic Republic. Morbar, dictator. Death to the dictator. Makbar, Khomeini. Death to Khomeini. Khomeini Qatil Hukum Mertash Batal. Very hard to pronounce that, but Khomeini is a killer. His rule is illegitimate. This year is the year of Sayyid Ali's house falls. This is the year Sayyid Ali's house falls. How Mush Ali, Pahlavi is coming. And another line I kept hearing in different forms, the simplest one. Do not be afraid, we are together. The blackout became its own battlefield. Internet blackout everywhere. Phone lines cut during call out hours. No normal text messages for ordinary people. Rare access only through Starlink or complicated slow workarounds. This is how they try to shoot in the dark, isolate neighborhoods from each other, and keep the world blind. But even blind, the nation moves. This does not feel like scattered protests. It feels like repeated attempts to take and hold streets, with people returning after each dispersal and staying late into the night in multiple districts. And something else keeps showing through the cracks. Stress inside their forces, fear, confusion, less willingness to fight for the terrorist Islamic regime occupying Iran in many places. You can feel it in how fast they reach for bullets, how often they still fail to fully clear the streets. And in final note, Iran will be free because we are willing to pay whatever it costs. We are not going home because going home is just a slower death, more decay, more silence. We are putting our lives on the line for a tomorrow that belongs to all of us. One nation, one flag, one leader, together, we are the revolution, and we are coming for them. And this is from my friend Decado. He goes by Decado because he can't give his real name, and he's using a VPN that barely has any signal because they're using Chinese jammers against Starlink and internet across the country. It is reported that mass deaths, mass killings have been happening, and including possibly up to over 10,000 to 15,000 in total. We don't know. Some numbers are as low as 2,000 to 4,000 in the last few days, but it's happening. Revolution in Iran is happening. It's going to get harder before it gets worse. It's life and death on the streets right now for them. It's the amount of information that is coming out is sparse. It's very hard to get it out, but we're praying for the friends of MySpace on Twitter, and as well as the friends that we know online, and people praying for Iranian Canadians and Iranians that have family inside of Iran at this time, who are fighting for their freedom. Now is the time for the Artesh to begin to take part. Now is the time for the rest of the world to take notice. Do not stop talking about it. It needs to be talked about. The United States and Israel are prepared. I'm hoping that they may respond against IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps targets. That is something that may and probably does need to happen to weaken this regime. But Pahlavi will return, and God bless them. And our friends in Iran need the support of the rest of the world right now, and make that known. Here you're seeing the protests and the levels of recorded, at least that's as of January 9th. That's an old post, but January 9th, these are the mass amount of protests. 36 protests in Iran province at roughly local time, and that's on the 10th of January. 15 of which were medium sized, and 6 were which were very large. But they're incredibly large over many districts. This is as of a couple of days ago. The CTP, ISW, this is the ISW report that still does they do updates on Ukraine as well for us in the space, and as well as others. And that they have observed 22 protests in 9 provinces across Iran since its last data cutoff, 13 of which were in Tehran city. The number of protests have taken across Iran is likely much higher than the nation, than we know across the nation. The internet is shut down, so extremely limited footage. And there's probably more deaths, and the death rate is probably higher than that has been recorded. This is a very fluid situation. Security forces are deploying live fire, rubber pellets, and tear gas, and to disperse. It's happening in Mashhad, it's happening in Tehran, it's happening anywhere. But this is what's happening. So, all right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Aaron Boma, military historian for Carleton County. God bless the people fighting for freedom.